Hi everybody, I'm Tony at your IP Interface Brief, and here is a wrap-up of the labs that I did today. Today I did two troubleshooting labs. I did the TA01 and TA02 from the Cisco 360 workbook. So I went back so I've already done the two configuration labs, CA01 and CA02 of the Cisco 360 workbook. And I actually skipped the first troubleshooting lab the first time around, just because I didn't have my rhythm down, I didn't have my methods down. And I actually did some of the troubleshooting lab 2 before I did the configuration lab 2. I know this is all confusing me just talking about different lab numbers, but anyhow, so today I just did two troubleshooting labs. Each lab was supposed to be 2 hours. Each one actually took me about 3 hours, even maybe a little bit more than 3 hours. And that's okay because I'm working on my pacing. I'm working on my speed, my pacing, and being able to move through the troubleshooting questions. So I did the troubleshooting lab number 1 this morning. It took about 3 hours, 3.5 hours. I did all 10 tickets that are in that troubleshooting lab. And then I stopped for lunch. I took a 30-minute lunch, and then I came back and did troubleshooting lab number 2. Now, full disclosure with troubleshooting lab number 2, it is a lab of 10 tickets, and I already did the first 5 tickets when I did my lab last weekend. However, I never saved my configs, so I didn't have a starting point. I had to start from scratch. I didn't save my configs, I didn't save my answers, so I had to start from scratch. And the funny thing about this today, it's actually not so funny, just sort of, I guess, ironic, I guess. When I finished my troubleshooting lab number 1 this morning, took a lunch, came back and loaded up lab number 2, I never saved my configs from lab number 1. So that means I could not grade lab number 1 tonight. I didn't even look at the answer key because I would not be able to judge my answers based on memory. So that just means that sometime in the future, I will need to do troubleshooting lab number 1 again, and actually grade it. So so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and expose my points here. Let's see, this lab is a total of 24 points is the maximum score. I did not get all 24 points. And in fact, I was deducted. So so how I grade this is I grade it the same style that they give in the instructions, which is you do not receive points for any incomplete subsection. And for a section, there may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullet points. You have to get all 7 bullet points to get the 2 points. And so if you only get 6 of the 7, then you're supposed to give yourself a 0. Well, that's exactly what I do. So the very first one was DMVPN. I'll just kind of go through some of the answers. It was pretty basic stuff. I think here, this one was show run interface tunnel 134. I think it needed, it was not. It was on the hubs. I mean, excuse me, it was on the spokes. Show run interface tunnel 134. Each one needed a Nextop server configuration. That was it for that. The switched network, actually the switched network said that there were a bunch of routers that could not reach each other. And actually I found that they could all reach each other except for one, which needed a switch port trunk native VLAN, and that would have been, I think, switch number 1. Show run include native. Yeah, switch port trunk native VLAN. That was the only command I needed to enter to get the points for this one. The rest had already resolved itself. And I don't know if that is because I did this lab already and maybe I did save my configs from before. So I don't know. But anyhow, I got full points for that. So that's if we keep track. So out of 24 total points, I've gotten 2 and 3. The next section was OSPF. This was a 3-point Trying to figure out where's a good spot I can sit this. Nope. It is on another monitor. The OSPF section, as I was going through the answer key, I kept going like reading off a section and being like, yes, and reading off another section and being like, yes, because I was doing all of the things right, everything that I needed, that I was supposed to get right, I was getting right. And except for the very last item here, there's a bullet point that says you are not permitted to change the OSPF network type on any interface. And it says loopback networks must be advertised with their original masks. So typically when you need to advertise a loopback with its original mask, you need to change the network type from the default loopback network type to point, so it will advertise the original mask. And I completely ignored that bullet point because I thought that the loopback statement underneath there superseded that one. And that was not the case as given by the answer key. Instead, they wanted me to do a area range command, basically a summarization. So here if we have show IP interface brief on router 4, this loopback, show IP OSPF interface paste, I changed it to network type point, show run interface loopback 104. I put in here point. It should have been by default network type loopback, and then they wanted you to do an area, so it would have been a router OSPF1 area 104 range, and then the network there. This would have been the correct answer for that one. I did not use this one, so I got it wrong. So I gave myself 0 points, but I was very happy that I was able to troubleshoot the rest of the items and identify them is sort of methodically, and that's what this is really about: establishing good methods and a good strategy. So I gave myself 0 for that. So on our thing here, we'll do, -3, which means I did not get the 3. I just won't count it as I add it up. The next section was EIGRP. I got full credit for that one. That one was 2 points. I don't think there was anything interesting to share about that one, other than must provide reachability, no default routes, unicast protocol. This one needed a neighbor statement and a network statement, and that was about it. The RIP one, the RIP had a couple of bullet points here, a little bit of configuration. I was very happy I was able to pull this off, even though this one is considered sort of an intermediate level. It's not a very difficult troubleshooting lab to do. I considered it, it was a lot of fun. I only missed 1 bullet point here, so naturally I gave myself 0 points. It said RIP may only send unicast updates, and so they're talking about routers 3 and 4 here in the answer key. And so for that, show run section router RIP, and then here on 4 and show run section router RIP. And so here, router RIP, we see version 2, we're redistributing OSPF, passive interface default, which makes all of the interfaces on the router passive interfaces, and a network statement and a neighbor statement. And so my understanding, right, is when you configure a neighbor statement towards a neighbor, it turns off the multicast advertisements for that protocol and uses only the unicast. That's not true for RIP. You know, there's, you know, in networking and especially in these Cisco studies, there are so many caveats. And here is that caveat. This is in here by default, passive interface default, which makes all of the interfaces passive, and then no passive turns on RIP for Ethernet 00. And even though there is a neighbor statement in here, it is still sending multicast updates. So if we go logging console debugging, and we do debug IP RIP. This is the example from the answer key, and I didn't bother checking it. So as soon as I get the right debug up here, I'll pause. But yeah, so this is one of those things that's just going to have to be a hard lesson learned. I'd love to give myself full credit for this, but I cannot. I cannot, because I got it wrong, and that wouldn't be true to myself. Wouldn't be honest with myself if I did that. All right, come on. When am I going to see what I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, maybe it's just happening every time. Sorry, I'm sitting here waiting for it to come up, but it's always scrolling off screen. If I scroll this down, you'll see here that RIP is sending a v2 update to 224.0.0.9, the link local RIP multicast address for v2. So even though I have a neighbor statement which is sending the unicast updates, for example, this is an outgoing update. It's also, in addition, sending the multicast updates. And the way to disable that is the passive interface. So if we do show run section router RIP, we see we have no passive interface here. So if we were to just take that off, then we should no longer see those RIP updates, multicast updates. So I gave myself 0 points for that, and that sucks, because all these sections that I'm not getting awarded any points for, they're like gimmies. You know what I mean? They're easy stuff. The next one was redistribution. That was a 3-pointer. I got full credit for that one. I felt really good about that one because it was exercising a couple of the things that I've exactly been studying, like the exact sort of topology or redistribution styles that I've been studying. So I was glad to be able to put those in practice. It was very cool. 3 points for that. The next one was BGP. This one was pretty easy. It was a confederation. It was an AS path. Was not hard, I don't think. You know, and I've said this over and over. If we go back to all of the labs that I've done since I started this 100 Days of Labbing journey, I have consistently delivered strongly on BGP, and it's because it's a protocol that I'm most familiar with and have the most experience with. And I've spent a lot of time labbing up for work. Anytime we've ever done anything at work with BGP, I was at home labbing it until the sun comes up, making sure I knew the ins and outs of every possibility about that certain scenario or protocol. And I've consistently delivered very well on BGP, and I'm happy to know that, you know, my hard work that I've put in outside of these labs, you know, my actual hard work that I've put in for my career using this protocol has paid off very well. I haven't had to learn many new things about BGP. There's always a few, but not many, and especially these sort of basic tasks. These are basic. These aren't very hard. These basic tasks. I'm all aces. The next section here was, well, I guess I can show you what the BGP one was. So let's do show run partition IP AS path. This was the original AS path, and you have to escape the parenthesis characters because the parentheses are actually regex characters. And so when you're doing a regex string, if you mean the literal meaning of a parenthesis, you have to escape it with a backslash. And so this is my entry here, and that allows that prefix or the prefixes that contain that literal string to pass. And again, that was in the answer keys. Nothing bad there. Here we're at the 2-hour mark. So this is where I hit my 2-hour mark. I was in between ticket 7 and 8. So ticket number 8, I actually had to give myself a 0. And if I remember correctly, I didn't do much on ticket 8. In fact, I remember making a note that like, hey, I think this is already done for me. The only thing that I saw was you needed 2 neighbor statements for OSPF non-broadcast neighbors. And then the thing that I got wrong, and the reason that I gave myself 0 points, was because under router number 4, show run section IPv6 router EIGRP. This was the redistribution command, and it did not have the include connected tag in it. It was just the highlighted portion, and that was wrong. You needed to go back and do the include connected in order to see the upstream interface on router 5. So I gave myself a 0 for that because once I saw that in the answer key, I was like, oh, of course I missed it. Why didn't I see that? And again, this just kind of goes back to conditioning, and I want to condition myself to be able to look at these topologies and look at these tasks and know exactly what needs to happen, as well as the commands to make that happen. And this is one of those. And IPv6 is definitely a weak point for me, so I don't want to award myself false points. I got 0 for that, and that's the way it is. The next section was quality of service. Although the answer key was actually, they need to do some quality of service in their, some quality assurance in their answer key. The configs were all screwed up. The routers it was calling was all screwed up. It just looked like, that scenario had been butchered quite a bit and maybe changed over time, and they didn't change all of the answer key parts. It was mixed up. So what I've deduced out of it, actually, I did get it right. That's the bottom line. So I do get the 2 points. Wait, I do want to keep up with my points. Let me see. 3 for that. No points for IPv6 because I forgot to include connected. The quality of service, I get 2 points for that. There were 3 class maps in a policy map, and they were out of order. So you just needed to flip them to fix them. That was it. And actually, I wasn't sure. I was just kind of going on letting my instincts drive that time. And that's what I felt like needed to happen, and that's what was right. And also, the ticket number 10 was an IP SLA. I did get this one right. And again, I put in here IP SLA responder, R6. Don't know if that's right. It was right. So again, let my instincts take over, and I did get it right. So I don't know if that's enough to pass. In fact, I don't like getting lucky there at the end with the QoS and the QoS and the IPSLA. That was really just luck that I happened to do that. If that QoS or IPSLA was any more complicated, it would have been out of my range. So if we just count up here, what do we have? 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 and 3 is 11, 14, 17 points. So I got 17 out of 24 just to make sure. 2, 4, 7, and 7. Okay, I just want to make sure that the So I missed 7 points. I would say that 17 out of 24 is probably failing. I would probably expect to be maybe in the 20 out of 24 range for passing for 10 tickets. And you got to remember, those 10 tickets went beyond the 2-hour mark. So at the 2-hour mark, I actually didn't get these right here. So actually, I'm 4 points below that, which gives me 13 out of 24. And 13 out of 24, I'm sorry, is not passing. It actually doesn't say whether it's passing or not, but I would have to assume that at the 50% mark, that must not be passing. But that's okay, because I'm working on it, and we have lots more labs to do, and I have a wonderful opportunity to do troubleshooting lab number 1 again, because I forgot to save my work, so I have no idea what I did. And that's it. This lab was really fun. It was relatively easy. These were not very difficult. These were not. I did not feel like they were too far above me. I was a little confused at times because it seemed like some of the configuration was already done for me. Like I felt like I should be configuring some of this stuff from scratch, and a lot of it was done already, and it was just like one command to fix something. And sometimes I feel like that's not enough. That's not enough to be prepared. But I mentioned before, I was talking with a friend the other day who recently passed this CCIE, and said sometimes you feel like when you're doing the troubleshooting tickets, like it can't be that easy, and some of them just are. And I guess there's no way to really know what's right, which ones you got right and which ones you didn't while you're in the exam. I actually don't know if you get a breakdown of your score. I think you just get a pass-fail. But if you get the output that they want, then you got it right, right? So that's it. So that's a wrap-up of this lab. Next weekend, I will probably do configuration lab number 3. I'll probably do configuration lab number 3. Generally, the configuration labs are about 6 hours with a lunch that I'll put in the middle, and me doing some commentary here, just like I'm doing now. Normally, it stretches out beyond that, and I just don't feel like doing another 9-hour shift of labbing. I'll probably get to around the 8-hour mark on a 6-hour lab. So let's see how I do next weekend. We'll do configuration lab number 3. See ya.